what does success look like to me? What am I driving towards? And those things are very personal. It's amazing what you can accomplish when there's trust in the room. And when you remove that trust, it's remarkable how inefficient you can become.
And when you've got guys around you who are buying into your vision and pushing towards the same thing, it's energizing.
So you have your Ridgeline AGM coming up this Saturday, which is a couple days away.
Yeah, 2 days from now.
And how are you feeling going into this?
It's different. A little bit intimidated because it's definitely the longest format proper agenda meeting I've ever done, and I have to lead a lot of it.
Yeah.
But also super excited.
So it's gonna be like how long a day?
Oh man, we tried to condense it down to a 6-hour meeting. So
okay,
10 a.m. start till 4 p.m. and then we're just gonna be meeting as a group. And the big thing that's gonna be different with this one to anything I've ever done before is I actually have, our Forge team is helping me. They're stepping in as a board of advisors, and I have a chair with Chris who's going to be helping guide the meeting, and he's actually been given a ton of input into what we should even be talking about. And it's been pretty interesting because there's been a lot of back and forth between him and I, because he's also a high level leader in the business he's in, a bit bigger than ours, different market. But he's trying to be like, oh, these are the points you really need to focus on. This is what you need in the pre-reading. And this is the tone and even language as to what it should look like.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, that's great, but it's got too strong of this tone and the agenda needs to focus on these things more. And we actually went back and forth for days, like rebuilding the agenda and going back and forth.
Yeah.
And just like anything, I feel like we've met in the middle. And we'll see, because we kind of pulled the best out of both of our approaches, I feel. And yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a really impactful meeting. It's just a matter of how it turns out.
And it's going to be interesting because there's going to be Joel, Chris, myself, all there acting as advisory board.
Yeah.
Then you, which is also, you're part of the leadership of Forge, but this is your company. So your role is going to not so much be as a Forge advisor, but as a CEO of the company. So you're going to be facilitating from that side. And then each of the three of us are going to facilitate different things through the day on your behalf, I guess, but as advisory board. And so this contrasts to other AGMs that you've done in the past, because your leadership team, ownership team with Ridgeline is the same as last year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So walk us through that. You've got yourself as CEO and major shareholder.
Yep. So I'm still the major shareholder. My wife still has some shares.
Yeah.
And since if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be around. She's joining, like she's not active in the company, but she is going to join us as a shareholder, also to just have deeper understanding of what I'm doing, which I feel will be valuable. John is my COO, and he's going to be potentially pivoting in his role, and that's going to be a big topic discussion. Noah is my head foreman and installer. He's our Red Seal.
And these guys are both shareholders.
Yep.
Yeah.
John's been a long-term shareholder. Noah bought in a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And then Shane is not an active day-to-day shareholder, but he's a small percentage shareholder who acts more as an advisor. He's got his MBA, and he's based out of Toronto, which we're in British Columbia, so he's a long ways away. But these are sort of meetings that he brings us real value.
Yeah.
So,
and he's keeping kind of a bird's eye view on what's going on.
Yep. And if I ever have any higher level questions about business or anything, just because he's in the corporate world.
Yeah.
So he's a great soundboard for me to run things by. And then, like I said, in these types of meetings, having somebody with their MBA and who's in the banking and corporate world day to day, it's just such a great perspective to come in and challenge things. So
yeah, that's great. So then, compared to last year going into the AGM, what is, this wrestling, I guess, this advanced wrestling about what the agenda is going to look like and stuff, that's probably fairly new for where you're at.
I mean, I'll be honest, I know this is true with a lot of contractors who are businessmen, don't take an AGM serious.
Right.
I mean, we've been in business now for about 10 years with Ridgeline, and I've had like a couple actual formal AGMs, and they were really poorly run. Like I remember one of the first times I actually had a big group of shareholders. I think there were 7 or 8 of us.
Yeah.
And I held our first AGM, and we just went over numbers and no proper agendas. It was just a meeting that we kind of talked about our financials, and I wouldn't say it was a disaster, but just these things need to be led and structured well, or else there's confusion and conflict, which I really felt came from the first official AGM I led. And then since then, that was the only really other major AGM we held. And since then, it's just been like basically me and my partners sitting around coffee, talking very, not deep diving into financials at all, just talking the high level numbers. So definitely haven't been taking AGMs serious enough to this point. And that's one of the things I'm really excited, but a little bit intimidated about this, because you know, it's really your kickoff for the year. It's like a evaluation of what we did last year, in dissecting the numbers and all your metrics and everything, which again, we're working through. And even through this process of having an advisor and critiquing our AGM, he's like, where's these metrics? Right. Yeah. And we're like, clearly we need to get better at metrics, because some of the ones we have are just not detailed enough, and some of them we're not tracking at all. So it's been very informative, very insightful to do this.
And this is interesting because you are now getting input from people who aren't on the ground with you day to day. So looking at what you're doing from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say, and I always have a challenge when the head of a company runs the entire AGM. That's a challenge to me, and I never think that it's quite as good as it could be, because you have a certain perception and certain way of viewing what you and your crew have done through the year. And you also typically, I mean, most business owners, small business owners in particular, don't have any training when it comes to running an AGM. Like that's not something that, you don't, it's just, it's kind of a gray area. And I mean, someone with an MBA is going to have some training in that. Someone that has focused on going to certain types of conferences or taken certain types of side training off the side of your desk may have training. But as a rule, you do what you have to do in small business, and that's just something that will get left in the cracks.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, in all honesty, of the 4 of us, between you, Chris, Joel, and I have the least board experience.
Right, that's true.
And like, so even going through this process and having people who have been, I think, chaired boards, but been served on multiple boards outside of their own businesses even. Yeah. It's really, really big learning curve for me.
Well, and this is one of the things I think I would encourage all small business owners to consider, is to serve on local charity and community boards, church boards, even up to like city leadership. I think that, depending on what your focus is in life and what value you think you bring. But I just feel like there's so much that you can gain from sitting around the table with people that think differently than you.
Yeah.
And also in some of these boards, you have some really, really community oriented people who have sat on boards, like multiple boards for a long, long time. And I know I was part of a local charity board at one point that was going through major transition, going from what would be considered as fairly unhealthy board. And they just happened, they were fortunate to get a chair of the board that really had an understanding, had a lot of experience with boards, and really realigned the board to a place where it was supposed to be. And sitting on that and going through that process was just unbelievably educational for me. Yeah.
Well, for me, one of the things that I'm really excited about this meeting, like I'm intimidated because I have to like open it and I have to set the tone.
Sure.
And I have to lead and bring up our values and do all the leadership stuff. But one of the things I'm really excited about is the fact that I'm not running it. And I even encourage Chris and the advisors. It's just like, I don't want to talk because it's one of the biggest things I've been reading in all these books lately, is when you're doing these meetings, like you yourself, you want to be listening, and you want to, this is a great time for your partners to have a voice and have some innovation and talk and create synergy. And I'm a little bit overpowering when I lead meetings, and I can just input too much. And I've even made Chris aware. It's just like, if I'm talking too much, tell me to shut up. Like,
yeah, right on.
Like, so, but it'd be hard for me to do that if I didn't have high level advisors sitting in the room with experience who've sat in these environments a lot and can keep the conversation going and ask good questions. Because I know, like Chris and Joel, they've brainstormed together and they've gone over our agenda, and they're bringing high level questions to challenge my team to work through. Man, I'm excited for that.
Yeah. And I think that the advantage of having a separation between someone chairing a meeting like this versus someone who's leading the company, I think what that does is allow shareholders space that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that alone, I feel like, and I'm excited to do a postmortem on this because I just feel like it's going to be super interesting. But I think that alone is going to bring just a ton of value. Yeah. There's no doubt that it is a challenge for a key leader of any organization to redirect because of outside input. Yeah. It's a challenge because we lead because we feel like we know what's right. Mm-hmm. And often, and you've got to think about this, like often the best organizations are run by very strong people. But when you take the voices of the people closest to you out of the equation, or if they're very seldom heard, then I think what happens is that you just lose a lot of potential depth. Yeah. And I think from a risk management standpoint, I think that you can make mistakes a lot easier, and people that are close to you can just look at you and say, well, you know, you kind of deserve that. Like, you made the call and you didn't really ask us, and that's where that is.
And I'm famous for that. It's been a lot of our history, and it's because in these exact situations, you know, I haven't left enough space for my team to give authentic input and even be critical of me.
Sure.
And that's again, intimidated but excited. I, in this setting, am going to actually be able to have honest feedback where I want to be held accountable. And I think this is a good format to bring that out.
So part of the issue is you can look in the mirror and then forget what you see, right? Like, that's possible. Or you can look in the mirror and you can make change. And so I feel like a good AGM is going to be like a really high quality mirror. Which should have, like, you know, those old school mirrors where you have the sides that turn in so you can see the back of your head. Guys never use them. Women can't live without them, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. Or else they have a small mirror that you can see different angles. Most of us are like, I have a small bald spot in the back of my head right now, like just random. And yeah, I'm like, okay, but it doesn't bother me. I don't see it. and so I think that, actually, speaking of that, I once had my hair fall out in patches all over my head, a wild alopecia that I had, and it was just like shiny, and it was very, very cool. And I was studying at the time, and some of the students in my class were like, man, like, how do you do that? I'm like, oh no, that's not me. that's just is what it is.
It's just random.
It's kind of funny. But I think that when you look in the mirror, I think that there's a two-part thing here. Looking in the mirror is important. And I think that this format and having an advisory board, you know, really participate is going to help this mirror be more telling. You're going to see more detail. And then the question is, like, how do you go into this with the right mindset to be able to accept things that you need to change?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just honestly being prepared mentally to go into it, and that's the benefit of having you and fellow advisors who I deeply trust, who I can go to after and be like, they made this criticism of me. Is it legit? Right. And to be like, yes, no, take it serious, or what have you.
Right.
So that's one of the most exciting things about this, is having peers and mentors around me to listen to the critiques and everything, and encourage me to leave the emotion out of it, because that's what a lot of us do. Especially, I'm famous for that. I get emotional about criticism, which is a bad thing to do.
Yeah. But it's super hard not to.
Yeah, it comes down to the end of it. I see some leaders out there who just let it roll over, and they're like, think about it, and they don't own it. necessarily. Unless it's
I know
worth it.
I know that there's two separate things going on, because I've known a lot of high level leaders in my life, and I really believe there's two things going on. One is how you take it in front of people, and the other is how it actually affects you in the background. And I remember I was at an event where Ralph Klein was the premier of Alberta for quite a few years, and he made a lot of really tough changes in Alberta. So he had a lot of people who hated him, and he also had a lot of fans, which I was one. He was just a dude that went in and he just made a lot of change, and I admired him just for his like serious, just his will to just do it, to not just talk. And and he even came and talked to our class where I was studying one time. It was just like 40 people, and he just took the time out of his day while he was leading the province to come and chat with us, which I thought was outstanding, and was very candid. Like, we could just throw any question. Anyways, his wife was speaking at an event once that I was at, and she's like, you guys have no clue, like, the turmoil and the wrestle that he goes through in the dark at home when no one's watching. And so I think good leaders have an ability to let it roll off for the most part in that kind of a setting, but it's still gonna affect you, because if you lead, you care. Yeah. Right.
And that's something I'm not good at. Like, my wife she calls me out for this all the time, because call it a generational sin or whatever you want. Like, I have anger issues.
Sure.
And I'm way too emotional. Like, I just, as a leader, and I didn't know that was even a big deal until very recently, until people actually started calling it out in me, which is why you should have people around you who will call things out in you. But yeah, so that's something I'm going to be prepping and praying for before I go into that meeting, is I don't let my emotions flare, because I got anger issues, and I take things personal. So when someone gives me critique, I have a historical record of taking it personal. But one of the things I've learned in the last year that I'm going to really bring into this, and I think it'll help with this a lot, is that people are going to be bringing critique and stuff not to me personally, but for the position I hold.
Right on.
And that's a separation that I just need, because that goes both ways too. Even a lot of the praise and respect you get isn't necessarily for you as a person, but it's for the position you hold.
Sure.
And kind of having an understanding of that, I think, will help me a lot going into this meeting, so that when people are coming up and pointing out things, they just want me to do my job better. It's not that I'm a bad human being, which is how I've always taken every form of criticism.
Well, and the thing about it is that you are working with a team. You have aligned yourself with fellow shareholders. And so even if you've run rogue in some ways and they criticize that, at the same token, there's also a responsibility.
Yeah.
And so as a team, to find ways in real time to correct and pivot and discuss and have those hard conversations. And I think that that's one of the things that my take is, just watching you grow over the years. That's something that you have really attempted to do better in real time, because the tendency is for all of us. I shouldn't say for all of us. Some people are just unbelievably good at this, but I'm not sure that it happens without some intentionality, which is, keeping accounts short. If something goes sideways, like having that discussion in real time and trying to find, at least to bring it into the light. And this is one of the things that I personally believe, is that when there are issues, and there always are, the issues don't become things that split partners apart unless they're left in the dark for a while, typically. If you drag something into the light, even if you don't find a solution, but I think that you've been trying to do that more recently than you did in the past.
Oh,
yeah. And I think that comes from a whole bunch of things. Number one, it comes from recognizing the value of humility, which is something you just can't recognize when you're starting out. It's hard to, at least very hard to. Secondarily, you also have a track record of seeing what happens if you don't do that. Right. And so there's like this warning bell that goes off in your head. If there's something that needs to be addressed, but is not being addressed, you're like, if that sits for any length of time, it just becomes a much bigger issue, potentially, often. Yeah. And so I think those two things are big motivators. And then the third thing is just straight up maturity. Like, as you get older, you just recognize, hey, if you deal with something, even though it's uncomfortable, it's just so much better than letting something sit.
Yeah. And experience in doing it over and over. like that equals to that maturity too. But
it does. With the exception, and this is the other thing that where I think that maturity and not just straight up humility comes in, because with humility you can be like just dragging everything at all times out onto the table.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, we got to do this. But with maturity, you recognize that not everything is that.
Yeah.
Like, and I know for me personally, if I have an issue, some sort of a minor conflict, I'll often let it sit for 24 hours to just get a sense of, is this something that I need to dig into and find a resolution to, or is this something that is just a big deal because I'm in a certain emotional state?
Yeah.
And so I guess that's the push and pull of that. And often I feel like we can try to be like, keep accounts so short that we're making big deals out of something that's literally just a passing thing.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that you've been working on as well. Is that like, it's just like, is this something that's worth hashing through, or is this something that we just need to let sit for a bit?
Actually, honestly, one of the biggest things with my approach on, because we're more or less talking around conflict.
Yeah. Well, conflict or just issues that matter, that if they're not dealt with become conflict.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, the issues, like, I think we've always done a pretty good job of working through those as a team, and even taking a level of accountability. It's where conflict needs to come up that I've always struggled the most, or when people are, and for the record, or as a disclaimer, if people bring up genuine conflict that I even know, I don't get offended by that.
Right. Yeah.
It's what we as leaders need to do is we need to be able to save face and accept criticism, even if it's not legitimate.
Sure.
Or they communicate it in a really poor manner and they're offensive in their way, because they might have a real point to what they're trying to say. They're you can't expect them to communicate it at a high level. You can try and coach them through that. That's where I had the biggest issues, is when people would have a legitimate thing, but they would come and bring it in with the wrong approach.
Yeah.
And I would take it personal, and I would ignore what they're saying because they said it in the wrong way. And it's funny, because I actually learned I was doing this when my wife and I were just getting marriage counseling. Yeah. And he took a serious exercise where he built our little house and showed the areas we were strong. And when we did this exercise, our house was really strong, except for the walls around conflict.
Right.
And a lot of that he actually turned on me, and he's just like, you don't know how to deal with conflict. As soon as she brings up criticism of you, you get offended, and you try and win every argument. And it really stems from a place of insecurity.
Sure.
Where it's just like, if people bring up criticism, I have to be right. I have to prove myself that I'm not weak or faulty in any way. Heaven forbid, right?
Yeah.
So
how would that be possible?
So learning that in my marriage, I always it really translated into my leadership in my company life a lot too, because now you have to look at every situation like, how legitimate is what somebody's bringing to the table? Because even if they're completely right, they're probably only 90% right, or 95%. And there's a bit of learning for both parties in every circumstance.
Totally.
And even if they're dead wrong, there might be 1% in there that you can learn and improve on in some way, at some different perspective or angle.
Well, yeah, and I think that there's a couple points that I find interesting there. Is that, number one is that they may be wrong, but perception is a real thing.
Yeah.
And so if people perceive that something is an issue, even if it's not an issue, that perception is still actually genuine. And this is one of the things that over the years you recognize. If someone says, well, I feel this way about something, you can say, well, you shouldn't feel that way. But the truth is they feel that way.
Yeah.
Right? Because every person is a expert on their own feelings, or at least should be to some degree. That, I don't mean that it needs to necessarily be validated as far as like, well, that's like an excellent feeling. But I think that there is, even if something is not a valid criticism, if it's perceived to be valid, it needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And at least in some way, particularly with business partners, because those are the kind of things that are like, okay, well, why do you perceive this? What's your rationale? This is not my intent. This is not what I'm thinking my actions are going to show, and yet this is the perception. That can happen.
I think this comes down to emotional maturity.
Right.
And that's something that we could actually almost do an entire episode.
Totally,
I actually think we should in the future, because emotional maturity is something that you should be aware of. It's a level of self-awareness.
Yeah.
But it's also something that you want to work through with your team. If you want to grow together as a team.
And it's a perpetual growth area. It's not like you can look back and say, oh, I've got it.
Yeah. No, it's a total, I mean, that is in the essence of what emotional maturity is having an understanding of growth and learning from every single mistake and learning how to communicate through relationships and partnerships at a high level where you're coaching and teaching through, not just bringing outright criticism, and understanding where everybody else is on your team, their emotional maturity is, because that's going to dictate how you communicate.
Yeah.
So, to say the least, I feel like there's been an element of that I've improved in slightly. Yeah. Over the last couple of years.
Well, and I think the other thing, going through what you're chatting about, is that tone really matters.
Yes.
And I feel like tone is something that is really hard in today's day and age, because people are used to saying what they want to say, however they want to say it online. Mm-hmm. And often in real life, it's not the same. Like, that same person may not use the same tone talking to your face as they would online. That said, I think that we've become slightly accustomed to weird tone and aggressive tone and tone that is not necessarily productive. Yeah. And I think going into something like the AGM coming up in a couple days here, my personal goal, one of the things that I carry as a responsibility is to ensure that the tone of a meeting like that is productive.
Yeah.
And that the tone stays in a place where it's not intentionally offensive.
Yeah. And the back and forth that Chris and I have had on the agenda, and even the pre-reading and how we word it, like how we're wording that pre-reading, was probably the thing we went back and forth on the most, and almost entirely because we were trying to have a different tone. Yeah. He wanted a little bit more values, but like accountability type tone, whereas I wanted more of an inspiration, encouragement type tone. Yeah. And because it's so important. Those things are one of the foundation for what could be a very meaningful and productive meeting to just either a total waste of time or a hurtful meeting, because those happen.
Well, it's interesting, and I've thought about this pretty extensively. I would sooner listen to someone whose tone I admire but I don't agree with them than someone who I agree with totally but I hate their tone.
Really?
Absolutely. And I'm not proud of that. It's just something that I've recognized about myself. So if I'm listening to, pick a leader and I love their tone, I can be like, wow, this is fantastic. And then I can walk away and analyze what I just heard and be like, that is crud. Like, I really, really don't appreciate what they're saying.
Yeah.
But if I love their tone, man, I can be like almost like I have to be super careful because I value tone to that degree. Versus I can be listening to someone who I think, man, this is like crazy. And then step away from it and be like, wait a second. What I hated there was the tone. But what's actually being said, I totally align with.
Interesting. I've never taken that much weight in tone. I've never thought about it that hard.
I'm a sensitive person, and I'm fairly quiet for the most part. And so for me, tone is just... it really matters.
Huh. Well, that's really interesting. I'll have to.
And when I am communicating in a way that I don't respect my own tone, I'm very critical of myself. And every once in a while, I've gone into conflict with a tone that is just horrible. And I beat myself up, usually not so much for what I said, but if the tone's wrong, man, I really
That's true, actually. A lot of my biggest regrets are not that I said things that didn't need to be said, but how I've said that I can totally relate to.
And I come away and I'm like, what was that?
Yeah.
Like, how did I go into that? And it's always about emotion at that point.
Yep.
Because for some reason, something's coming up that is, like you say, it's probably needs to be said. But by golly, like, where's the grace? Right? Like, where's the tone of like, hey, we're in this together?
But it's hard, man, because I mean, life happens, and like even going into this very highly sensitive meeting right now, I'm being very careful what I'm stressing about and letting in around my my headspace right now, because like you and I both have seen each other go into high value meetings and stuff, but man, when there's just stuff coming crashing and burning all around you and around work or outside of work, family, like and life is super stressful.
Yeah.
You're more vulnerable to get emotional when you shouldn't. It's just being human. But being aware of it is
which is interesting, because if you take a step and just use an example of what we do physically. So today I've got to go right after this. I got to get in my truck and drive to a neighboring small town and get on a really steep roof that's very snowy, and it's cold out there right now. So we're fitting this in because it's literally like almost too cold to be working with metal right now. And so I'm going to be on a steep, challenging place that's going to demand an incredible amount of focus. And if I'm not paying attention, then what I'm doing becomes extremely dangerous. But if I'm paying attention, there's a way through. So I've got to set up my scaffold diligently. I've got to have my fasteners and my ropes in the right places. And I've also got to really recognize what I'm walking on. And I think that if you do those things correctly, then what I'm doing is not, and I know my limits. This is a key as well. Like I know what I can and can't do, and I know how that adjusts. And I often say, like, when you're driving on an icy road, but it's right around zero, you can be driving on perfectly good pavement 1 second, and then you go around a corner and all of a sudden, boom, you're onto glare ice. And so I think that in the physical world, we understand this quite intuitively. In the world of communication and conflict resolution and AGMs, it's not always that clear, right? Like we are often less aware that we're in control and everything's good, and then all of a sudden we turn around a certain corner and then boom, emotions are there.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the things that you can't necessarily prevent, but you can go in prepped to say that I'm expecting that there may be a couple corners in this conversation that are going to feel like glare ice. Yeah. And if I hit the gas too hard or the brakes too hard, like I'm going to have to just kind of like be steady at the wheel in certain places, or else we could have something happen that's just not productive.
Yeah. I mean, what are you aiming for an outcome in these meetings, and especially as the leader of these meetings, if you're conducting or leading these meetings, like how you emotionally handle these topics is huge. You should go into every meeting, in my opinion, with a high level of self-awareness and emotional maturity, and just expect, I'm almost prepping myself to be like worst case scenario. Like everyone's just gonna, and if it doesn't happen, cool, we'll have more encouraging talks around other things. But going into them like mentally prepared is a big deal.
And what would be your ideal outcome?
In what metric?
Just overall. Because I mean, I guess my point is, where is the real value that you're looking for out of this meeting?
Higher level of buy-in and accountability. So like I mean, we got a pretty big goal and vision as a company. Yeah. But for us to actually do these things, people's job roles need to change. Yeah. And we got to start tracking metrics, and we need to
different metrics. You're tracking some
some they're just weak.
Yeah.
They're necessary, but we need deeper level of metrics. Yeah. And I really want some ownership from like people grabbing job roles and so a big part of that is like I want there to be good synergy in this meeting. I want there to be inspiration. I want to cast a vision and hopefully bring clarity as to where we're going. If I do my job right in this meeting, I'm going to try and bring clarity and where we're trying to go. And then as a team, hopefully we're building a strategic plan quite quickly, because we got a section in our AGM over actually not just talking about what we're trying to do, but what are the steps to build to get there in a strategic plan. So yeah, I mean, to me, if this is a really good meeting, there'll be some accountability held between me and my partners.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the issues and have really productive conversation around how to fix those issues.
Yeah.
And then we're also going to forecast towards this upcoming year and be like, where are we going? Like, and how are we going to get there?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the great things I love about bringing the advisory board in is they're going to help bring some higher level of synergy and just, give good input and ask tough questions. And
I think that one thing of having people involved that are involved in different organizations and different companies, it brings a level of a bit more clarity around what health and lack of health looks like. Mm-hmm. Because I think that sometimes when you're going through transition in a company and you're in it, and I would say that you've been going through a bit of, I think that your company has been very fluid and very alive. So there's always transition. And so the question is, what's healthy transition and what isn't, and where's wasted energy and where is the energy focused well? And to me, I see like those are key things for your organization, is making sure that the energy is focused in the right directions.
Yeah, for sure.
And as a team, if that, that alone is massive, right? And so I feel like coming out with a greater level of clarity, if it's just internal, guys speaking internally, you're comparing yourself to your previous self, which is healthy in a lot of ways, but sometimes you don't recognize the depth of challenge it takes to transition to something bigger. And so you can feel like, well, we've been beating our head against the wall in this particular area for so long that we must have to pivot from this. Yeah. Whereas people coming in from outside may be able to look at that and say, you are like 3 steps away from the breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And so just keep pressing in this area because it's worth it. And I think that's where perspective helps.
Yeah.
Because when you're in it and you're battling, I mean, you just think about a physical battle, and someone that's higher up can see where the troops are. And one troop might think that they're about to cave, whereas the other one is literally on a thread and they just need to persist for a few moments.
Yeah.
And I think those are the kind of like areas of insight that having people that are coming in from the outside are going to be helpful.
Yeah.
It's going to be neat. And I personally am going to be interested to watch how that plays out. I think it's going to be fun.
Me too. This is new territory for me, but I mean, I really want to grow, and I feel like we're in a position where we want to pivot, and like, we took it was a resetting year for us. We took a couple steps back. We let go of some people, but we're actually working more on our identity now, more than ever. So this is the time to pivot and actually make a plan and execute it. One thing that I want to ask you about, in your opinion, is I had a bit of a disagreement. Not a disagreement, but Chris brought something up to me, actually. It's just like, because he's chairing this, and when he was setting the agenda, he actually had some of the sections were led by some of my team leads that aren't shareholders, and I didn't even invite them to the AGM.
Okay.
And I was just like, so aren't AGMs just for partners and shareholders, or are they? And it wasn't a conflict, at all, but he's just like, oh, well, I think your team lead should have been a part of at least part of the meeting. And he's like, yeah, definitely there's some parts that you should have shareholder only, but like your island lead, your CFO type bookkeeping people, anyone who bears any real responsibility should be a part of it. And I was just like, I'd never heard of that. So I know in big corporate world, like we're not that. Big corporate world, AGMs are primarily shareholders and advisors. So that's where I kind of got my idea on it. But I guess in a smaller company, there should be more buy-in from your high-level stakeholders. So I'm just curious what your take is on that.
I mean, the challenge that I have there is just based on time. If you have unlimited amounts of time, then I think you can bring in other people and make sure that they're on track as well and have a voice in what's going on. But if you don't have the time, physical time for that, then you have to limit it to the people with the key voices. And so to me, that's kind of the way it would be. And I feel like in this particular meeting, probably the shareholders is going to be enough because there's a lot to go through. and as it is. And I think that if there's, there's, when you spread out from the smaller core, there's just more, you get into more details. But I think what Chris is saying is really important, and that is that your key people that are not shareholders have to really understand the decisions and the train of thought, and what happens at the AGM needs to be communicated extremely clearly. And so if that's not the case, then it's better to have them there so that they can at least hear.
So after you brought this up, I actually went through our agenda, and I was like, to be honest, I felt like most of the meeting, my team leads should have been there. Because it's just like, even having our bookkeeper there to give more in-depth and understanding to some financial components, sure. But our island lead, our media guy, like people who I genuinely think are like big players in our company, a lot of these sections for them to have been, even if, what's the word? Not an advisor, who just sits and watches.
So an observer. Yeah.
Just to sit and observe and watch the meeting. Like, I think, so I don't know, we'll see how this goes. And I think when we do a postmortem on this meeting, I'll be curious on that, because I do feel like maybe next year when I do this, I'll bring all the team leads in for a portion of it. Because I know there's some components that is a little bit sensitive information, especially when you're deep diving into your financials.
Yeah.
That you don't want necessarily everyone to be around there for.
Yeah.
But a lot of the rest of it could have been good.
Well, in my experience with board meetings in general is that I was part of a charity board for a while, and they, at one point, for a very short period of time, extended an open hand to the society. So these are society members that are signed up as society members to the charity.
Yep.
They extended the invitation for people to at any point just sit in on a board meeting. So with the hope of having transparency, like that was the whole idea.
Yeah.
And so there was an individual from the society that took us up on that and sat in on this meeting. And after the meeting, we were all like, that was not great.
Oh, no.
Because not any fault to the society member whatsoever. They were just taking advantage of something that we had offered. But what happened was that we were constantly going back and explaining context. Constantly. And as a board, we all knew the context. And so what we got done in that meeting was a fraction of what we should have, because there was one person at the table that wasn't privy to all the discussions leading up to where we were at that moment. And what we found was that was extremely unproductive.
I could definitely see that.
And so I think it really matters about what type of meeting. If it's about information, and where we're heading and stuff, I think having people that aren't at the key owners, etc., it's important for them to hear it and be there.
Yeah.
But if it's about wrestling through stuff that has been wrestled through for years and there's a ton of context behind it, I think that it can be really disconcerting for someone that comes in and all of a sudden is parachuted in and you're like, what's going on?
But again, I really think you can build your agenda around those. Separate the points.
You can,
where you have your more just shareholder sensitive topics.
Sure.
And then you have your team leads, and because I do feel like going into this, I'm like, I really wish I had a few more of my people to help, create that innovation and synergy.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know.
And I think, that is like, I don't think that either of those thoughts, like one way or the other, is right or wrong. It's about what's the agenda for this meeting and what does that look like.
Yeah.
And so, and I do know that if you have people around the table that shouldn't be there for a portion of it, it can really halt production. If there's people that productivity really, but if there's people that should be there that aren't there, the same thing can be said.
Yeah.
And so I really don't think that it's like this is right and that's wrong. I think it's a question of, and I think maybe you're right. Like in the future, do half and half.
Yeah.
Where half the day is
break the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it possible? I don't know. This might be a dumb idea. Is it possible to bring people in as solely observers and they only get to, you could say you get like 2 tickets so use them sparingly, because that was the other concern is like if you have 10 people as opposed to 6.
Yeah.
That's just more voices and more explaining, like you said. So if you just say you're here as an observer.
Yeah. And if people, I think that has a lot to do with facilitator too, because a good facilitator is going to keep things in check.
Yeah.
Right. Like a good facilitator is going to do that. But like I say, so if it's someone that's involved in day-to-day operations that may not have the complete understanding of the shareholders, but be close to it, that's fine. What I was talking about here was someone that was parachuted in that was just like, they had an idea, like a foggy idea, but not, and that we found that unproductive. So I do think that that's just kind of the check and balance, but I think probably doing half and half would be really smart.
Yeah. And I think, again, we'll do the post-mortem after this meeting, but I was even feeling like going through our agenda, and it was like, man, there should be other people here for some of these topics,
right,
in some of these sessions. So yeah, we'll see you next year.
Yeah, and I think that some people really see a ton of value in being at the table, and other people just couldn't care less.
That is also
like it's
true.
kind of like going to a wedding with my kids. Like one of my kids just can't. There's nothing better for them, and the other kids are just go and tell us that they got married. Like, don't include me. And so that also depends a bit on the type of personalities you're working with.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's totally fair. So, because I do feel like actually coming out of this meeting, I'm going to have a big weight on me to give and my key leaders too. Like, we have to take what we create and now translate it.
Absolutely.
And it would, from my view on this, is like, we have to bring potentially a lot of information, a big pivot, and we're going to leave that, and we're going to have to bring what we created here, bring it over to the company, and not just take it to all the stakeholders, but our other team leads. We need to redo a lot of this work.
And you know what? Like, that's probably what's going to happen is that you have the AGM. You guys will establish where you're heading. Taking your look back, taking your look at where you're at, and taking your look forward. And then once you do that and you're all agreed and on the same page, you take it to your crew leads and you have a united voice, but you're going to have that conversation pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, one thing I am doing because actually Chris wanted me to bring our media guy down and record the whole thing.
Interesting.
Which was like, well, no.
Yeah. It's a bit like, sure. It's a good idea though.
One day, maybe.
Yeah.
But what I am going to do is I'm going to record the whole thing. I'm going to set up a mic.
Yeah, good.
And then this is the beauty of automation. I'm just going to get it, our AI app to record, transcribe it, and then I'll throw it into ChatGPT and I'll summarize the whole meeting and create action points and something we can easily do to make these meetings actually productive. It's not just a bunch of talk.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing with big meetings like this. It's almost like a conference.
Yeah.
You can go to a conference, get just pumped about what you're doing and where you're going, and you get home and how do I implement all this? Here's the day-to-day weeds I've been dealing with forever, and within a week or two, all that synergy, all that excitement, everything that you were all amped up to do is now useless. You might as well not have gone. And so that's going to be one of the big goals from this, is not just having, and it should be a goal for every meeting. Not just getting excited and making plans, but actually making change and implementing what you're talking about.
I think that one thing I would say to that too about going to, the meetings that are important that we go to that affect us. I'd say that even if there isn't direct results, it's residual. And I think that a lot of times that there's certain key things in our character that are developed in these times. Yeah. And so I don't think that there's necessarily direct, you can just say that things are useless that have actually been valuable in the moment. However, I think that implementation is what takes it from being, kind of good to amazing.
This is true.
Right. Well, this is good. It's going to be neat to see how it goes, and we'll have at least some kind of comment after the AGM as to how it went, and give some feedback on the podcast. Maybe it'll be that great that we have a whole one about it. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I hope so.
Yeah.
I think we will.
Yeah,
I'm that excited about it. I think it's going to be very meaningful. So we'll have a lot to dissect from it.
All right. As always, thanks for listening, guys, and hope you have a wonderful day.